Great people, guys, people. How y'all doing? So, I'm going live from my phone today. I got to do the Odie's Office episode from my phone today, and actually, let me make sure that I am on Do Not Disturb mode, you guys. Okay. So, yes, got to do the podcast episode from my phone today. The reason being is because my camera's not doing too well, right? And actually, I love, man, listen, this is the reason why I do things in one take all the time. This is the reason why I do, like, very much so uh, natural live streams because it gives more of a, I don't know, a natural feel. But yes, so this is Odie's Office. What's going on, Black man? This is the antidote. You know, the reason why I call the podcast the antidote is because it is a direct antithesis to a lot of the red pill content that's out there. My name is Professor Odie, and if you did not know, I am a content creator. But first and foremost, I am a pre-licensed therapist in the state of Pennsylvania, and I am also an international mental health and wellness coach. What it is that I do primarily is that I help you align your most real self or your most ideal self with your most ideal outcomes. And what else it is that I do is that I help you identify what in your environment can be utilized to the best resource and leverage to your best ability in order to get to your next step in life, right? So today we're going to be talking about basically black male masculinity, right? And the reason why I decided to talk about black male masculinity today is because it felt like it made the most sense, right? It felt like, based upon the conversation that I was having with Slim on TikTok, literally just like 5 minutes ago, we were having a conversation around the idea of black men understanding what it means to respect the feminine, right? And understanding what it means to respect femininity as an energy that is in a growing energy, a blessing energy, an energy that can assist you in healing in a multitude of ways. Now, the way that me and Slim were having a conversation, it was a conversation very much so that was aligned with this idea that if you respect the feminine or if you engage with the feminine in such a way where you are not just mindlessly consuming it or you're not being disciplined in the way that it is that you move or behave, then, you're going to have a hard time, right? But what we meant by that is that recognizing that we as black men within ourselves and understanding what it is that it means to be gentle, right? Understanding what it is that it means to be softer in our approach with ourselves and healing ourselves, right? And how it is that we can construct more healthy masculinities from that space and from that contextualization requires a particular level of discipline and a particular level of humility, including accepting influence from the feminine. Now, I want to make sure that we're orienting this conversation correctly because the title is what is black male masculinity or black male masculinity or black malehood, something along those lines. I really don't remember what the title is, but it's going to pop up in the description in the title place. But essentially, it's a conversation around challenging what we as black men perceive to be masculinity, right? What we specifically as black men have utilized in the past in order to identify with our more balanced and healthier selves and what that looks like, right? So, for example, in the conversation that I was having with Slim, he said that he used to do some work with community organizations in the black community in the way that it is that he learned how to come about his understanding of particular levels of knowledge allowed him to have epiphanies about what it means to respect and understand the feminine, not only just as an energetic source outside of him, but something that existed within him as an individual and something that, can influence the way that it is that he moves through the world. So as he and I were having a conversation, what he basically said was that if a man has submitted to understanding and seeking knowledge within the self through discipline and through crafting structure for himself, then women are going to want to follow him, not simply because they want to quote unquote be submissive to him, but it looks like, and you can tell that this man has learned how to protect and manage for himself first, right? He has learned how to stabilize. He has learned how to identify. He has learned how to engage, right? And a number of men believe that in order for them to feel whole, to feel healthy, to feel, complete as men, they have to engage with women in such a way where it's consumptive or it's, suppressive, right? A number of men conflate suppression and submission, right? Because the masculinity that we practice now does not teach us how to earn submission. It teaches us how to create suppression, right? So as we were having this conversation, as I said previously, Slim said, having this ability to discipline oneself into one's purpose, to discipline oneself into one's own drive, to discipline oneself into one's own factors of stability, increases the probability of you having more pleasant communications and interactions. Now, what does this have to do with black malehood? What does this have to do with understanding what black masculinity is? A number of us as men identify ourselves or identify our processes through this concept of doing, right? This concept of being or this concept of behaving. And when we align ourselves in this way, right? When we behave in this way, it makes us feel fulfilled in our manhood. It makes us feel as if though we are doing the quote unquote manly thing, right? Now, identifying it from that perspective or recognizing it from that perspective, what we get is this concept, or what we get is this archetype that we all tend to follow in order to, once again, increase our perception of what manhood is, right? Now, if we do not take the time as men to critically examine, if we do not as men take the time to critically examine that nexus or critically examine that archetype, we can fall into, how can I say? We can fall into negative patterns of manhood that don't do us any good, right? What's an example that does not have to do with women or does not have to do with things of us externally? Well, think about how it is that you approach yourself in your internal narrative as a man, right? Do you approach yourself gently, or do you speak to yourself in such a way that's demeaning? Do you speak to yourself in such a way that's neglectful? Do you speak to yourself in such a way that's, tearing yourself down? What does your inside voice sound like? Is it more of a critic or a cheerleader, right? And when I ask a number of men this question, it dawns on them that the way that they talk to themselves is not even gentle. It's not endearing. It's not self-loving. It's self-deprecating. It's self-removing, right? We don't truly evolve into this space or into this internal dialogue that is more conducive to the man that we would like to be. What does it have to do with femininity, Odie? Well, a number of men believe that even talking to themselves gently will make them more weak. Even being more vulnerable with themselves will increase their weakness. And I was like, me and Slim agreed, right? There are a number of men who still feel that emotional intelligence is feminine, right? That emotional intelligence is not a skill that should be utilized for the growth and for the development of healthy families, right? So how does that relate in a lot of ways to, once again, we as men, we as black men, understanding what our blackness looks like, or understanding what we as black men or us as black men can use as a baseline to develop a healthier masculinity, right? So I'm going to look up this quote by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., right? Because I want to make sure that I'm quoting this correctly. So give me a quick second. There we go. So, what is needed is a realization that power without love is reckless and abusive, and that love without power is sentimental and anemic. Right? This is from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., right? The Where Do We Go From Here speech. What is needed is a realization that power without love is reckless and abusive, and that love without power is sentimental and anemic. What does this mean? Now, for me, when I read this quote, it seemed like a striking balance between, once again, the powers that we perceive to be masculine and feminine, right? What is needed is a realization that power without love is reckless and abusive, right? So power without love is reckless and abusive. Reckless and abusive essentially means that you are not considering the feelings or the reality of the people around you when you are exercising power, right? It also could potentially mean that you are not being realistic, or you are not being, how can I say, mm, hmm, what's another word that I'm looking for? You're not being understanding of the environment in which you are in and how it is that it is potentially not yielding to you because of how it is that you are treating it. So what do I mean by that? There are a number of men who believe that things need to be done by force, right? Force is absolutely necessary in order to get things done, right? And there's no other way that we as men can engage in order to facilitate an outcome, right? It gets to be very interesting at times. The reason being is because we do not recognize that this force, or we do not recognize that this, how can I say, this ceaseless want or the ceaseless need to believe that we have to be in front creates chaos, right? So when we talk about hypermasculinity, when we talk about this excess masculine energy, a lot of men push against that because they believe that what we're saying is that masculinity inherently is hypermasculine, or masculinity inherently is toxic. No, that's not what's being said. What's being said is that the application of how it is that we are utilizing this masculinity is too high, or the concentration is too much, and it creates excess or toxicity. And that's a valid response. That's a valid response, specifically within black men. And the reason why I tend to validate that response amongst women, especially amongst black women, is because when we as black men go to perform masculinity, I've had too many conversations with too many black men to know that we as black men do not necessarily always believe that we are performing it correctly, or we do not always believe that our value is going to be assessed appropriately based upon how it is that we perform it. Or you have to work twice as hard to get half of what it is that they have. And for us as black men, that may apply to how it is that we are performing masculinity, right? So if we already exist in an environment that prioritizes and rewards masculinity of a non-empathetic and violent nature, and then we get told that we have to operate at twice this capacity in order to get half of what somebody else has, y'all don't feel like that's a recipe for disaster? Like, y'all don't feel like that's something that can be extremely harmful, right? That language, that narrative of you have to be double of what somebody else is in order to get half of what they have. That means that you have to be quadruple in order to get whole. And that's just based upon math. You have to do quadruple. You have to be quadruple. You have to perform quadruple in order to get whole. Now put that exponential math on top of recognizing that you as a man, as a black man, you already come out. You got two strikes against you, right? You black and you male. So once again, continuing with this mathematics, I have to work 2 times to get half, which means I have to be 4 times as good to get whole. And as a black man, I already have 2 strikes against me, right? That means that 66% of myself is already counted against my trajectory. That's wild. That doesn't seem like very good, probabilities. So of course I'm going to be propelled to hyper compete in an environment that already has been situated to have a lack of resource to express my masculinity. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? We as black men at times are setting ourselves up to fail to believe that the only way that we can derive value or provide value in a family is monetarily. That's insane. Because in that situation, the odds are indefinitely stacked against us. We need to diversify what our masculinity looks like and how we can provide safety and security to families outside of financial provision, not necessarily because we can't reach it, but because the probability of us performing that ideal that a lot of people are looking for, that probability is not very high. It's not impossible, but it's not very high, right? Now, if we were to have a conversation about how to navigate outside of those probabilities, you still can't work around emotional intelligence. You can't. The highest performing executives, the best bosses, the best industry leaders, the best entrepreneurs, all of them have worked on their emotional intelligence. All of them. All of them. Right? And some of the other ones haven't. And they still have gotten some type of success, which is beautiful. You're not going to knock them. Right? But I'm saying that the strategy on this side works too. And in a lot of ways, it's less confining. Right? We don't have to sit here and pretend as if though the only part of my humanity that is valued or that is, important is my ability to produce goods, is my ability to engage in labor. There are too many black men fighting over the archetype of being a modern slave, and it bothers me. You want to be the biggest, baddest buck. Why? Why? What is the purpose of your warriorhood? Why? What is the aim of your strength? Why? Why are you doing what you're doing as a black man? Right? Now, when I was on the live with FD Signifier, we were having conversations around humanization of black maleness, right? Now, the humanization of black maleness is a very complex procedure. And the reason being is because there are a number of black men who believe sincerely that their humanity is flawed and they cannot fix it, or they do not believe that their humanity is flawed. They believe that that's just how men operate. Men not supposed to talk about their feelings. Men not supposed to do this. Men not supposed to do that. Listen, I tell black folks all the time, whenever you hear the words natural or traditional in the United States, go do research. Because 9 times out of 10, like Conscious Lee say, research over me search. 9 times out of 10, that traditional means white. That natural means created for whiteness, for white bodies, for the consumption of white people. Right? Because once again, they are the beneficiaries of most of the ideological wealth and most of the agricultural wealth in the country. So just based off that logic, we need to make sure that we're doing research on what it is that we say is natural. because we may just be emulating behaviors that other people have prescribed to us, right? So what does that have to do with masculinity? Once again, what does that have to do with hypermasculinity? What does that have to do with all of these things? We as Black men need to begin diversifying what it is that we identify as masculinity. Baseline. Baseline. We need to continue to have dialogues around what masculinity looks like and how that masculinity can be restructured in such a way where we begin to understand why we believe that this is the appropriate way to engage as men, right? Talking to FD once again about humanization. Now, another reason why that's a difficult process is because a number of us as Black men still truly do not value emotional intelligence. We don't. We do not. We believe it's a part of a demasculinization agenda and a feminization agenda, all of these things. We believe it's a part of the feminist agenda. Look, bro, look. Let's talk about this idea of agendas real quick, shall we? The definition of an agenda is a laid out plan or a verbalized plan that is utilized or prepared for a meeting or for a committee, right? That's an agenda. If everybody got an agenda to assist men or to help men or to even get men to understand that they are harming these communities, don't y'all think that we should probably take a look at some of these things? Potentially, at all. It's literally the equivalent of listening to somebody in your camp or in your flock about how it is that your leadership may be harming the flock. That's what emotionally intelligent leaders do. They listen to the people that they are leading. So if we as men are the leaders, or if we are the supposed leaders and we are the people who are supposed to lead, why are we not listening to the people that we are quote unquote leading? Right? And now speaking specifically to Black men, if we are supposed to be leading Black women, why are we not listening to them? I don't get it. I don't understand. I don't get it. Make it make sense. Even in the sense of scholarship, right? We as Black men shit on women as constantly. As soon as I say bell hooks, some of y'all get up and leave out of pure disgust. Well, you go peddle that bell hooks nonsense somewhere else. What, bro? What? She's Black. She's Black. And she critically deconstructs whiteness. That's all I need to at least listen, to at least hear, to at least turn an ear to, right? This person is committed to decentering and deconstructing white supremacy, even if it is for the benefit of Black women. I, at the very least, want to know what the sis is talking about. I, at the very least, want to hear what's going on. Any Black person that is at the intersection, I don't give a fuck what's between their legs. I don't give a fuck what's going on in their head. If they are in the intersection of decentering whiteness and deconstructing white supremacy, I want to hear how they're doing it. Because just because we as Black men believe and see that white supremacy is the enemy does not mean that we have a monopoly on how it is that it needs to be reconstructed or deconstructed. We don't. I'm sorry. We don't have a monopoly on how white supremacy should be deconstructed, and we don't have a monopoly on how Blackness should be reconstructed. We don't. We do not. Because what a lot of people don't realize is that if you deconstruct white supremacy, you have to reconstruct Blackness. If you deconstruct white supremacy, something has to go in its place. You have to reconstruct Blackness. You have to reconstruct it, right? So are we truly doing the critical work of deconstructing white supremacy and unearthing and taking up and digging up, right, the parts of Blackness that were hidden in order to reconstruct the identity, the true divine identity of Blackness, both woman and man? right? Because there was, once again, covering on both sides. You dig what I'm saying? So, what I'm going to do for this live is going to be a little bit different from my other lives. I have to end this one a bit early because I got to see what's going on with my computer. Get shut off on me. It's just real weird, G. But in the best conclusion that I can give, right? In the best conclusion that I can give, I really need for you all to understand the same way that we have critical race theory. For black folks, we need to engage in something that's like critical gender theory, right? Really deconstructing, really identifying away from whiteness what black gender dynamics pre-colonially look like. What did we actually do? How did we actually engage? Right? Because the reality of the situation overall is that we cannot continue to believe that the way that we are behaving now as black people, as it relates to understanding our own gender dynamics, is healthy. And specifically for black men, for us as black men, right? Matter of fact, nah, we're gonna keep it rolling. We're gonna give it justice, G. So altogether, I said I was concluding. I lied. I'm not going to. Because we genuinely need to continue to have this conversation, right? We cannot continue to believe that we as black men are equipping the most efficient methods of gender dynamics, right? We cannot continue to believe that that's what we're doing because the evidence does not subscribe to that, right? Now, when we talk about the evidence, there are a number of black men who give pushback, right? We are not saying we have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We are not saying we have to discard the entirety of masculinity. We are not saying that we will have no structures that are specifically akin to men. That's not what we're saying at all. What we are saying is that there has to be a radical reconstruction and a radical re-equipping and deconstruction of what it is that we utilize in order to create identities of masculinity now. So what does that look like? It looks like asking yourself, why do I believe that manhood has to be done this way? And if I do not agree with pieces of it, what can I do differently? Right? What, genuinely, we're going to call it what it is, what lies have I told myself about masculinity, about manhood? What lies have I been told about masculinity and about manhood that make me believe that I have to behave this way as a man so that I can continue in a lot of ways to create or to supplement my self-image or my self-concept to continue to say to other people that I'm a man. So we're going to break it down a little bit further. There's a meme that I saw, or a status that I saw on Facebook, and it was a woman saying, I hate when a man says that I'm him. It's a turnoff. And it was a bunch of men in the comments like, I'm Himothy, I'm Hemi Neutron, right? I'm him Barack Obama. Like it was just crazy. It was going crazy, right? And I was kind of on the fence about it. And the reason why I was on the fence because on one side, I do applaud men in their ability to engage in positive self-talk because a number of black men do not engage in positive self-talk. They engage in, bravado, right? They engage in self-talk that's very puffing up of the chest. But I believe that the revolution that we're going into as it relates to emotional intelligence is giving black men access to, pat themselves on the back or applaud themselves more often, right? In a genuine way. On the other side of that, the women were saying, I believe that if you are truly him, then we don't have to tell you. I'm sorry, you don't have to say it. It should be seen. I can agree to that as well, right? It's the idea of your work speaking for you. It's the idea of your actions being able to align with who it is that you want people to see you as, or you believe that you want to be seen as, right? Why is this important to the construction of masculinity and malehood? Well, it means two things. One, who you is as a person, who you is as a person is highly dependent upon, one, what you believe to be right and just, and two, how it is that you believe that things should be done or things should be engaged with in the world, right? Your sense of your once again your sense of right or wrong, your sense of moralism. As a man, I think the deepest root, specifically as black men, that we need to challenge, there are two of them. One, is this something that before colonialism we used to do? Is this something that before colonialism we used to do? That's one. The other one is on a deep level, do I firmly believe that I need to subjugate, oppress, make fun of, put beneath me, put second to me, black women in order to affirm my masculinity? Do black women need to be second so that I can feel first? Do women need to be second so that I can feel first? If you say yeah, then brother, you and I have an ideological difference, and that is your strategy. My strategy does not require that. It does not. Right? I'm just questioning why it does. Right? And where that questioning genuinely extends from is once again different conversations that I've had with men. Different conversations that I've had with men around the topic and the concept of manhood. Right? Because the reality of the situation is, as diverse as womanhood and femininity is, manhood is diverse that way as well. Masculinity is diverse that way as well. Right? And there are some people who believe that we can just do away with these terms, throw them away, and go about our business. I don't necessarily believe in that, right? Because once again, that feels like us as people in the West having a monopoly on how it is that the world operates. Like, nah. In my mind, we can keep masculine and feminine. I think that it's an applicable strategy to define and thus communicate these ideas, these energies, these things. And at the same time, and of the same token, I believe that we need to decolonize what that looks like, right? The decolonization process of these ideas is something that's absolutely necessary, especially for black men to take up that scholarship, right? What does the idea of leadership or what does the idea of patriarchy, if you are that attached to the idea of patriarchy, right? If you so choose, then what does benevolent patriarchy look like? What do those things do for the communities that are engaged with in this way, right? If you are truly a man's man, why not seek benevolence instead of malevolence or malfeasance, right? Why not seek to be gracious instead of wrathful? Why not seek to build instead of destroy? Why not seek to heal instead of harm? Why not seek to liberate instead of encapsulate or covet, right? So once again, femininity and gentleness is not just about, you know what I'm saying, oh, you got to be more like a woman, you're going to strip my masculine. Like, no, it's none of that. It's identifying and understanding what gentleness, what love, what appreciation, what autonomy, what empathy, what being empathic looks like, what being open, what being vulnerable with the people around you looks like, right? What having those qualities of leadership and what having those qualities of person looks like, right? We do not want to continue as black men. We do not want to continue along this path of us feeling as if though we are not being listened to, heard, or validated. Let's be very clear, right? Because even in the conversations that I hear in the manosphere, the red pill community, it still is rooted in this idea of feeling as if though the masculinity or the manhood that we are doing is not good enough. Okay, I hear that. I can validate that. So then what are we doing to challenge the way in which our masculinity is measured? How are we challenging the way in which we as men believe that we have to engage in order to be identified as men? How are we challenging what we value in society as providing? Right? Because all of these things unlock different avenues for men to engage in different activities, including black men, right? Whether it be occupations, whether it be processes of leadership, whether it be seeking different alternatives to developing community building, whether it be contributing to an overall based community based effort to continue to develop and nurture, right? We have to stop looking at the application of black maleness only in the space of production, because that's deeply rooted in slavery. We have to stop consistently applying the male body or the male psyche to what we can continue to just do or perform, right? We have fallen in love with this idea of the consistently dying man, or the consistently, you know, backbroken man. They fell in love with him because he went and provided from a space where it was still difficult to provide. That was emotional. That was drive. That was his spirit, right? They were applauding him because he did what he had to do in order to provide for the family, despite the environmental pressures to not do so. And that is the story that I've seen of the quote unquote good black man throughout history. It had nothing to do with money. Had nothing to do with money. It had more to do with his integrity. It had more to do with his willingness to be open and vulnerable with his family in order to provide for them. It had more to do with his willingness to engage with his community in such a way where his community was protected and built amongst the band of men in the community, right? It was about being empathic to the children in the community so that the children felt protected and the children felt led, especially the young black boys, right? It was about being autonomous in businesses, whether it be within the 9 to 5 corporate space of being a business owner, right? Whether it be brick and mortar or service. We provided for the community in more ways than one, in more ways than just industry. We were men of family. We were men of passion. We were men of creation. We are men of passion. We are men of creation, right? But we have to continue to parade and to lift up that narrative. Those black men are not lost among us. That's not a dying breed, right? This Renaissance black man is not a dying breed. It is just not the most populated or not the most popular voice for a myriad of reasons, right? But to seek ownership of one's community, to seek to be of service, fierce service leadership to one's community, right? We as black men ask all the time, you know, how can we as black men do X, Y, and Z, and A, B, and C? To commit to taking care of one of one's community, to commit to taking care of one's own community unlocks a wealth of opportunities for you to rebuild and reconstruct, right? The teacher care artist once said, if you can take over your house, you can take over your street. You can take over your street, you can take over your neighborhood. Take over your neighborhood, take over your city, take over your city, take over the globe, right? So black men, sincerely, your black malehood can be defined outside of your ability to do or produce, but you can find yourself in the space of self-knowledge and in the space of discipline and in the space of community service, which can include things that will bring you wealth, and you will have more wholeness within yourself. You will feel more complete within yourself. You will feel deeper sense of purpose within the self. Why? Because you are not just defining your ability to make money, or you are not equating your ability to make money with who it is that you are as a person, right? So now I'm about to depart because we got at the 40-minute mark, and I don't know how long it's gonna take for me to get this computer back to where it needs to be for me to see my clients. But before we close out, good people, great people, God's people, I am on the verge of a rebrand. So I want to let everybody know in a streamlined fashion what it is that I do, where you can find me, and how it is that you can continue to engage with Professor Odie outside of the lives, outside of the TikTok, and outside of the Instagram. So, as I said at the top of my live, I am a pre-licensed therapist in the state of Pennsylvania, and I am also an international mental health and wellness coach. What it is that I do is I assist you with aligning your most ideal self. I said aligning with your aligning your most ideal self with your most ideal outcomes. And as a holistic wealth coach, I also assist you with recognizing the resources in your environment and how it is that you can leverage them for yourself in order to continue to once again gather that most desired outcome, right? And how I do that is in two ways. Well, yes, two ways. One is one-on-one coaching. Now, my one-on-one coaching slots right now are filled, but I'm redesigning my website so that you all can continue to fill in my coaching availability form or my coaching intake form. Now, filling out the coaching intake form does not guarantee you a coaching slot, but it does put you in my email list so that you know when the coaching slots are open. So that will be on my website, or that is on my website. And those are the one-on-one coaching slots. Now, the book clubs, I'm constructing them to be hybrid classrooms. So by the end of Q1, I will have two hybrid classrooms. One will be the love classroom and the other one will be the wealth classroom. The love classroom will be focused on aligning oneself with one's greater self as it relates to relationships with the self and other people. So literally increasing your emotional intelligence and improving your relationship with yourself and other people. So the book club will focus on, give me a quick second, I feel like I'm about to cough. The book clubs in the hybrid classroom will focus primarily on self love, investigating one's traumas, identifying how it is that we can continue to think about ourselves in more positive ways, self actualization. All of these different topics will be covered, and there will be bi weekly roundtables where we can discuss the topics in these books. And that is the love classroom. Now, the wealth classroom is very similar to the love classroom, except the wealth classroom gives you an opportunity to dive into my financial literacy coaching and my financial wealth, my holistic wealth, as I said previously, coaching focus. Now, within that focus, a lot of people don't know that I have been studying financial psychology since 2017, and I have developed a procedure or an intervention. It's a 12-week, I'm sorry, an 8-week intervention by which you learn the psychological underpinnings of financial literacy skills so you can improve your financial self-awareness and improve your financial intelligence within that space. Now, that classroom has been designed to be a financial literacy incubator. Now, what that does is that it gives you access to my associates in different realms of the financial product space, whether it be taxes, credit restoration, alternative funding, high frequency trading, AI, all of these different things. E-commerce, automation, all of these different things that will allow you to come into this space and not only learn financial literacy skills, but also increase your financial capability and potentially your personal financial leverage. So that if you wanted to build businesses or wanted to teach your children how to build generational wealth, that is what we are doing in the wealth classroom. So once again, good people, great people, God's people, all of these things can be found in my bio and my Instagram. And once I get done reconvening my website or reconstructing my website, they'll be available there as well. So once again, good people, great people, God's people, I appreciate your time. My name is Professor Odie, and thank you for joining me on another episode of The Antidote. I'll see y'all next week. Peace.